You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Rolling. Don't use any of this. Don't.
Okay, carry 3.
Hi.
They love you. You know.
This is Princess Leia Organa. You're listening to Planet Leia.
Permission is granted to land on Planet Leia. Brought to you by Fantha Tracks. Here are your hosts, Claire Henry and Johanna Nibielios.
Welcome to the special edition of Planet Leia. This is a special edition for Star Wars Podcast Day. My name is obviously Claire Henry, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by my ever-present person who is always by my side in these things.
And it's of course me, Johanna Linde Nibelius. One day I will teach you how to pronounce my name as well.
To be fair, I will do, but I just think that with the Northern Irish accent, it just has that little bit of a twang, doesn't it? So it's been a good start to the Star Wars New Year. There's been obviously lots of announcements about Star Wars Celebration. I am sad that I'm not going, but my daughter is taking what we call in England GCSEs, so I have to be a good mother and I have to be there to bring up the hot chocolate and ply her with brain food. But, of course, we saw the conclusion of Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton Crew, and I must say that was one of the most enjoyable experiences in a long time. I mean, it was also nice to finally have a series where it seems everybody liked it. I haven't heard any like, oh, it's so bad, it destroyed Star Wars. It was a pure fun series. And yeah, it was really nice.
Do you think it harked back to the origins of Star Wars?
Yes, I mean, it was an easy plot. A couple of youngsters on an adventure. It didn't really, I mean, it did connect, of course, to the general history of the galaxy, but it was their story and it ended, and you didn't involve any of previously known characters. It was a nice story.
And it just flowed well, and it was brilliant. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It had a good amount of lightsabers, blasters, space journeys.
And when we're talking about this subject that we're going to talk about, food, it actually had a lot of food in it when I realized it, especially in the episode when they are at the spa. And I really would like to go to that spa as well and have some luxurious experiences.
Jude Law was brilliant in it.
And the fact that you didn't really know what kind of character he was, if he was bad, if he was good, if he was bad with a heart of gold or not. And I'm still not sure, even after the series ended, which of course is, if they decide to make a season 2, they can still build on that because we still don't know what kind of character he is.
What type of person he was. I thought he was brilliant. I thought the kids were brilliant in it. I thought they were superb in their acting. The alien one had probably more to deal with because obviously he was all teched up for the CGI as well. I thought he did exceptionally well.
And as we mentioned, he was really the relatable one.
I really enjoyed it. I have to say, what I did do, which I hadn't done before, is I didn't watch it week on week. I did do like first couple and then left it for a couple of weeks. And then I did the next lot. Semi-binged watch it, is that the way to put it? So I think that's why I enjoyed it. It felt more of a film.
Yeah, it was the same for me. Basically, the holiday ruined my weekly schedule. So when I saw like basically the one that was before Christmas and then after Christmas, I had to take it all in at once, but I liked it.
Keep that one going, I think. I think that is one to keep it going. And as we said, because this is a Star Wars Podcast Day special, we've decided to go down a bit of a odd route. Something I don't really think I've heard many people talking about in any Star Wars podcast that I've listened to. Food,
glorious food. When you think about food and
milk and cereal.
But really, when you think about food especially in the films and the series, you don't have a lot of examples of good food. Apparently, the food in the Star Wars say is bland, boring, and no one is really taking an interest in cooking.
No, it's quite amusing, isn't it? That you see all these different things. I mean, when we first met Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, he was there with his aunt and uncle.
Yep.
There's clearly family values in that sort of traditional old-fashioned sense where they were all sat around the table, but they were eating some sort of nondescript slop.
But at least you see them eaten, whatever it is that looks like some kind of Savoy cabbage or something that Peru is eating. But that's one of very few examples that you actually see of someone actually preparing the food and then people are eating it. I was really thinking about the film with the most positive portrayals of food is Empire Strikes Back, because you do have Yoda, who at least claims that his good food I cook. Which is the only thing where you actually have someone cooking food, but then Luke refuses to eat that whatever soup or stew it is. So you do wonder what it really tastes like. And then, of course, you do have the dinner scene in Bespin when they think they're going to a dinner and you have Vader sitting there instead. But at least the table is laid. So they were preparing for some kind of food.
There seemed to be sort of like lots of fruit and everything on that, strewn across that table. And it reminds me a bit like what you imagine the Mad Hatter's tea party to look like before they all throw it down. Seemed like a very traditional banquet. That's a good one.
We have talked about this before. The murder bears. They were preparing food. Even if it was our heroes, they were preparing them as food.
Oh, 100%. They were being roasted on an open fire.
Slow roasted meat is a really good. So that's probably the best thing that we've seen prepared, even if we would have probably would have preferred to have it without the clothes on and not actually being the main characters being roasted.
Dry roasted Han Solo probably isn't something that I would necessarily want. They were tied to the posts. So the minute the fire went on, okay, he would have had 3-degree burns anyway, so he probably wouldn't have been able to have done anything. But, you know, it would have been a very low, long, slow. They're quite evil. This seems to be one of our common threads, Johanna, murder bears.
Murder bears. And, you know, they would probably have died more from the intoxication, like from the fumes, than they would have died from the heat. I'm thinking that was what's happened quite a lot for when they were burning witches throughout history, that they actually suffocated before they were burnt.
You're right. Empire Strikes Back does seem to have the most examples of it. But then when you go, like when you think about Padme and Anakin, when they were having their little banquet together, that was a lot of fruit.
That's fruit. She can't eat much when she's wearing that corset, so I guess a little bite of fruit is what probably you can get. That's nice. A nice fancy dinner. They had some cheese on the side, even if we just see the fruit. And they do have their picnic as well.
I forgot they had a picnic, didn't they? Yeah.
And they are as well when they are traveling from Coruscant as refugees. You have that soup. We always call it Anakin's hot soup because you do have this take where Hayden Christensen is slurping in it and like, oh, that's hot.
Yeah, I forgot about that bit. It seems to be, it's incidental in the background, isn't it? Which is quite amusing in that way.
Hi, this is Andy Seacombe, otherwise known as Watto, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
What do we think space food is like? It comes from a processor and it's on the tray. That's how you think it's going to be, a bit like an airplane presentation.
Yeah. And I'm guessing we're thinking about like Rey in The Force Awakens when she's getting that little bowl of food. But we do see quite a lot of upper classes as well. Looking at it today, still think people like food and would be interested in food. We don't see enough of that. The one we do have, of course, that there is a cooking show in the Star Wars galaxy, and that's, of course, the holiday special.
Oh, Madam.
Stir, stir, whip, whip, beat. Stir, stir, whip, whip, beat. Or maybe she ruined it after that one. No one wanted to see a cooking show ever.
I always think that she is the classic, because how many Star Wars celebrations do you see where somebody is dressed up as them?
Quite a few. And of course, I love the circus in Skeleton Crew, where you have the circus from the holiday special that Neil is watching.
I thought that was a great little nod. There were little nods, to be fair, in the Skeleton Crew. Chef Gourmanda, that's the name. played actually by somebody called Harvey Korman, but definitely a female chef.
And Harvey Korman has several roles in the holiday special. And for those who are older than we are, I think he was a household comedian name in the 70s of the variety shows and things like that.
Yes. Let's go back to Ray and her food for a minute. I loved the concept of her food with the 1/4 portion. If that produced 1/4 portion, what was a whole portion like? I don't think Ray would have been able to have cooked a whole portion.
And it is fascinating to see how it all turns in this big bowl of something edible. And I guess that's the closest we get to cooking.
If you think about Rogue One and Jyn Erso and when she's young and she's with mum and dad in the family home, again, that was a nod to the original Star Wars, wasn't it? Being in there, but except of it being blue milk, was it green milk or was it blue milk? I think it was blue milk. I think it was blue milk. There seems to be lots of slops, stews and soups. Everything seems to be very liquefied in those sort of situations.
Yeah, and heated up. If we're looking at it, maybe it was better in the old Republic days, and that's why you can have, I mean, Tatooine with Luke and Aunt Beru and they could sit down to a meal because they were still so old-fashioned.
Yeah.
And you have in Rogue One, you also have that, and then you come further on and it gets processed. But it would have been nice to see, like in Andor, to see Mon Mothma, Coruscant, just like have a huge spread of food and see what really high-end food would be.
They seem to be fond of their drink.
Yeah.
Because if you think of Mon Mothma and her sort of hostings, and then in Solo, when Solo sees her for the first time since they were separated, she's got a nice cocktail in her hand.
Yeah. And in my mind, it would be interesting to see, like in Hunger Games, in the capital, all this outrageous food. And since it's space food, I mean, it doesn't have to be real. You can make it out of anything that looks good on film. You don't have to actually serve proper food. We would still, that's that and that's that, even if it's totally fake.
And then I'm going to be really gross, and I'm going to go to Jabba the Hutt, who likes amphibians.
At least he's enjoying his food.
Well, he looked like he was. He licked his lips, didn't he? After he had it. I mean, that was just like that was not pretty.
It seems to be one of very few examples of someone eating just because he likes it, not just because he needs to sustain himself.
Yeah, and then there was the butt of all jokes. Cyril in Andor.
And had some Cheerios.
Well, they weren't even Cheerios. They were like floaty balls.
Yeah.
Floaty cereal balls. And he just looked forlorn, just sat there eating it, looking all sorry for himself. There he is, and his mother's telling him off and doing all this. And there he is, just sitting there eating cereal like a long-lost teenager.
And it really shows, I mean, what you can convey in emotions with the way we handle food. And I would like to go back again to Skeleton Crew when they sit down, the father and the son, and like, they get this pre-processed meal that seems to be coming from a microwave. It's like, a home-cooked meal. And it's like, it just screams how boring and suburban hell that is for the one who really wants to go on an adventure.
I know we touched on one of our episodes. I did love the concept of suburban Star Wars. And with the food and the cars or transport, whatever you want to call it, and the homes and the way they were all set out, it was Stepford Wivesy, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, it was.
It turns out that it was Stepford Wives and Wanda that they were all being penned in. But I would have liked to know, did they have fridges, or as you say, did they just press the button and out came the package?
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark fanthatracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Then, of course, you do have the examples of where we have actually tried to bring food from the galaxy to our world. I mean, you've been to Disney World and to Batuu, and where they are actually serving Star Wars kind of food.
I've done several Star Wars days where the concessions do Star Wars themed food. And I'll tell you now that the cupcakes were out of this world. I mean, they were just incredible. They were huge. They had blue milk for sale and stuff on Star Wars Day. But actually, Batu takes it to another level. We went to the cantina, and the cocktails there were something else. They were strong too. They weren't, they didn't pussyfoot around with the alcohol content, but they were lovely, really ingenious. You did think that you were drinking some sort of alien thing. We went to the docking bay and we got some food there, sat in front of the Millennium Falcon eating this. Ultimately, what it was a salad and noodles. What was the other thing? Like a tortilla wrap sort of thing. But they called it all these sort of, I think we might have the ribs as well, Ronto's Roasters or whatever it was called. They presented it really, really well. So we got the spork, which was like the spoon fork thing that was, everybody was trying to pinch at one point, weren't they? It looked fabulous. And there was a lot of effort went into it. And to mass produce it so quickly and get through with it, it was brilliant. Have you been to Harry Potter's Universals? Yeah. Did you try the butterbeer there?
Yes, I've tried the butterbeer both at Universal Studios and outside London at the studio itself. It tastes a lot better when it's warm and it's grey and autumn than it did when you're in Florida. Even if I did an iced one in Florida because I felt it was way too sweet. But in the autumn, when it's grey and rainy and cold, then it was really nice with a warm butterbeer.
And of course, they had that sort of equivalent thing where you could get, the blue milk at the station in Batu, and you could choose a couple of different flavours. I did take 2 for the team. Not gonna lie, they weren't the best. I almost felt it was like going to congeal in my, in my stomach. It was like, well, I think that was more psychological for me. But my favourite drink was the fuzzy tauntaun in the cantina. It was a joy. It was a lovely cocktail. Thankfully, nothing to do with any sort of tauntaun, blood, fur, guts, or anything like that. But it was quite refreshing and it was good. I mean, I would go back to Batu again. I think I would do it differently. Having been to the cantina, it was great to see the robot doing his bits and pieces, the robot DJ and all that sort of stuff. But actually, should have just gone to, the Ronto's Roaster again or somewhere and got the wraps and stuff and just sat outside in the dark and had another drink again there, if that makes sense.
I think this is interesting. Do you feel like they really made it not just contemporary regular food with a new name, because they actually made it taste a bit different as well?
Yeah, they definitely you could get plain stuff, don't get me wrong. And Sophie had plain food, but she was younger at the time. But we certainly had all sorts of stuff. That I'm going to say, if Batu is an indication of what they think Star Wars food tastes like, it's either very Asian or Caribbean. I would go with those sort of flavours. Or it was very barbecued smoke. So you had those sort of contrasts to it. I'm assuming that that's what they think food in Star Wars tastes like.
Because I'm thinking about the old Star Wars cookbooks. I don't own, well, I have one for making Star Wars ices, where you could freeze in basically in little lightsaber shaped ice. So I have that one, but I had a friend who had the original Star Wars cookbooks I have made, and for them it was more like, and yes, I have made Wookiee cookies quite a few times because they actually
what are they like?
Regular chocolate chip cookies. And that's the thing. Those books were quite obviously made for a younger audience and a very American audience. So it was more play on the name of the food than it was something special. I mean, calling hamburgers, but it was still a regular hamburgers. You could make watermelon cubes, and it was basically just watermelon that you dipped in some blue sugar. So quite easy recipes, quite normal food, but just fun name. I do make the green lightsaber still quite, because that was basically water, lime juice, green coloring, and some sugar, and that's really good when it's in a heat wave. I usually do them still. But I haven't seen, or I have seen, but I haven't bought the Batuu cookbook, since they do have a cookbook from Batuu as well. But since I haven't been there, I haven't really felt like it's worth buying it.
For my 50th, Sophie did cupcakes, but she did Princess Leia cupcakes. So she made the fairy cakes and then sliced the top of it off and made them into the buns, and then did the faces, which was really cute. And then another friend, she made Star Wars pop cakes, like the little mini cakes on top, that sort of way. And they all came from the Star Wars cookbook sort of idea, which was quite good.
Well, I have made turquoise macarons, like Baby Yoda is eating. I have made those as well. Because it was so evident, he's eating a turquoise macaron. So yes.
My friend Claire last year, when I was down at hers, she made a Yoda cocktail in a martini glass, and she trimmed 2 limes and made the cocktail glass like Yoda, and then the cocktail was green chartreuse, and it was hideous.
I have tried to, in the Legends, you have the Corellian cake, the Rish cake, which is like something special you eat for celebrations. They eat a lot of it in the X-Wing books, and I did try to do them. What you do get is that it contains a lot of Wyron's Reserve whiskey and nuts. Basically, what I did was that I'm calling it an Irish chocolate cake, where you use stout and you make a chocolate cake with stout in it. And then I had Brazil nuts that I had soaked in whiskey for a very long time, and I had those nuts in it. I had whiskey in the frosting as well. The same whiskey that the nuts had been resting in for quite a few hours. So that actually, I'm like, yes, this is probably something you can eat to celebrate something on Corellia.
Good night, Saranara. I'd be out of there. I'd be like gone.
The last time I made it, we had a Star Wars marathon, so made it last throughout the films.
If I'm watching Star Wars at home and I'm doing like a proper Star Wars movie night, I do get my popcorn tins that I got from the films and make some popcorn and sit and eat that. Yes, I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put a shout out to Pablo Hidalgo and stuff and say, oi, sort out some food. We've had a look at what family life and potentially it looks like, but give us a little bit more.
More food.
More food. Who doesn't need more food?
Nowadays, if you want to make a Star Wars marathon, you need to plan it out, have a lot of food, have a lot of drinks, because it takes a long time to go through with it. And of course, you want to eat and drink what you see on screen. That's
the thing, is that people do emulate things, and it would be quite an interesting thing to do, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Right, so come on then. Come on, Star Wars people. Sort it out. Get us some food.
Yes.
Let us see what we can see in there. That's what we want, isn't it, Johanna?
Yes. Yes. And variation, and not just slops.
No, not slops. Not stews and soups, please. Let us see the proper stuff. That's for sure.
Hi, it's John Jackson Miller, author of Star Wars: The Living Force, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
This was a very abridged, quick whistle-stop tour of food through Star Wars in the eyes of Planet Leia. I think we've had a bit of a good laugh with it.
Quite a lot what we are talking about. We are trying to find different angles, usually with a female point of view, but now it was simply the food point of view.
Yeah.
Something that you haven't really thought about before.
Well, hope you enjoyed listening to it. Make sure that you check out all the other podcasts from Fantha Tracks and Star Wars Podcast Day. I know that every show's tried to do a little bit of a snippet of one. As always, there's plenty of people to thank. Email us at radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for all our links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro and Planet Leia opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays, 7 p.m. UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live on Sundays at 9 p.m. UK time. on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free and it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news. So thanks again for listening. And as we always say, we love you.
You know.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Collecting Tracks.